Good evening, my dear students. Tonight we are going to talk about moral dilemmas. But first of all, let us define the term dilemma before we discuss the nature and dynamics of moral dilemmas. A dilemma is a situation where a person is forced to choose between two or more conflicting options, neither of which is acceptable. As we can see, the key here is that the person has choices to make that will all have results she does not want. For example, a town mayor faces a dilemma about how to protect and preserve a virgin forest and at the same time allow miners and loggers for economic development in the town. It must be noted, however, that if a person is in a difficult situation, but it is not forced to choose between two or more options, then that person is not in a dilemma. The least that we can say is that the person is just experiencing a problematic or distressful situation. Thus, the most logical thing to do for that person is to look for alternatives or solutions to address the problem. When dilemmas involve human actions which have moral implications, they are called ethical or moral dilemmas. Moral dilemmas, therefore, are situations where persons who are called moral agents in ethics are forced to choose between two or more conflicting options, neither of which resolves the situation in a morally accepted manner. Consider the following example. Lindsay is a deeply religious person, hence, she considers killing humans absolutely wrong. Unfortunately, it is found out that Lindsay is having an ectopic pregnancy. As is well known, an ectopic pregnancy is a type of pregnancy that occurs outside the uterus, most commonly in the fallopian tubes. In other words, in ectopic pregnancy, the fetus does not develop in the uterus. Now, if this happens, the development of the fetus will definitely endanger the mother. Thus, if Lindsay continues with her pregnancy, then there is a big possibility that she will die. According to experts, the best way to save Lindsay's life is to abort the fetus, which necessarily implies killing the fetus. If we do not abort the fetus, then Lindsay, as well as the fetus, will die. In this particular example of a moral dilemma, Lindsay is faced with two conflicting options, namely, either she resorts to abortion, which will save her life, but at the same time jeopardizes her moral integrity, or does not resort to abortion, but endangers her life, as well as the fetus. Indeed, Lindsay is faced with a huge moral dilemma. According to Karen Allen, there are three conditions that must be present for situations to be considered moral dilemmas. First, the person or the agent of a moral action is obliged to make a decision about which course of action is best. Here, the moral agent must choose the best option and act accordingly. In the case of the example of Lindsay, Lindsay may opt to abort the fetus as the best course of action. Second, there must be different courses of action to choose from. Hence, as already pointed out above, there must be two or more conflicting options to choose from or for moral dilemmas to occur. And third, no matter what course of action is taken, some moral principles are always compromised. This means that according to Alan, there is no perfect solution to the problem. And for this reason, according to Benjamin Levestein, in Moral Dilemmas, the moral agent seems fated to commit something wrong, which implies that she is bound to morally fail because in one way or another she will fail to do something which she ought to do. In other words, by choosing one of the possible moral requirements, the person also fails on others. Now, let's go to the types of moral dilemmas. There are several types of moral dilemmas, but the most common of them are categorized into the following. 1. The epistemic and ontological dilemmas. Number 2. The self-imposed and word-imposed dilemmas. Number 3. Obligation dilemmas and prohibition dilemmas. And the fourth one, single agent and multi-person dilemmas. In the epistemic moral dilemmas, it involves situations wherein two or more requirements conflict with each other and that the moral agent hardly knows which of the conflicting moral requirements takes precedence over the other. In other words, the moral agent here does not know which option is morally right or wrong. For instance, I also honor my promise to my son to be home early, but on my way home, I saw a sick old man who needs to be brought to the hospital. Where does my actual duty lie? We cannot deny that there are conflicting duties, or what we call the moral requirements here. But we need to note that we want a fuller knowledge of the situation. Is an important purpose being served by me getting home early? How serious is the condition of the sick old man? Indeed, I could hardly decide which option is morally right in this situation. However, one option must be better than the other. Only it needs fuller knowledge of the situation. Thus, the term epistemic moral dilemmas. Now, we go to what we call the ontological moral dilemmas. This involves situations wherein two or moral requirements conflict with each other. Yet, neither of these conflicting moral requirements overrides each other. This is not to say that the moral agent does not know which moral requirement is stronger than the other. The point is that neither of the moral requirements is stronger than the other. Hence, the moral agent can hardly choose between the conflicting moral requirements. For instance, a military doctor is attending to the needs of the wounded soldiers in the middle of the war. Unfortunately, two soldiers urgently need a blood transfusion. However, only one bag of blood is available at the moment. To whom shall the doctor administer the blood transfusion? For sure, we could not tell whether administering a blood transfusion to soldier A is more moral than administering a blood transfusion to soldier B and vice versa. We go now to the self-imposed moral dilemma. This is caused by the moral agent's wrongdoings. For example, David is running for the position of the town mayor. During the campaign period, he promised the indigenous peoples in his community to protect their virgin forests just to gain their votes. But at the same time, he seeks financial support from a mining corporation. Fortunately, David won the elections, yet he is faced with the dilemma of fulfilling his promise to the indigenous peoples and at the same time allows the mining corporation to destroy their forests. Indeed, through his actions, or through his own actions, David created a situation in which it is impossible for him to be discharged from both obligations. Now, we talk about a word imposed moral dilemma. This means that certain events in the word place the agent in a situation of moral conflict. William Styron's famous Sophie's Choice is a classic example. Sophie has been asked to choose which of her two children, Eva or John, will be sent to the gas chamber in Auschwitz. And SS Doctor Fritz Gemund von Niemand will grant a dispensation to only one of Sophie's children. If she does not choose which one should live, Dr. von Niemand will send both to their death. Sophie chooses her daughter Eva to go to the gas chamber. Her son John is sent to the children's camp. Obligation dilemmas are situations in which more than one feasible action is obligatory, while prohibition dilemmas involve cases in which all feasible actions are forbidden. The famous Sartre student is a classic example, and it reads, Sartre uses the anecdote of a former student's moral dilemma during World War II to illustrate both the limits of making decisions based on a defined moral code and the erroneous of blaming passions for people's actions. The French student brother was killed in 1940 by the Germans, but his father nonetheless later abandoned the family to collaborate with the Germans. The student had to choose between staying in France with his mother, who found her only comfort in him, and leaving to fight with the Free French against the German occupation. After realizing he was caught between moral principles, family and nation, or the obligation to take care of his mother and the obligation to avenge his brother's death, he came to Sartre for advice. The philosopher told his student that there was no correct or incorrect decision. Neither moral codes nor the strength of his affections for one or the other party could determine what to do. Rather, the student had to invent his own solution to the problem. The famous Sophie's Choice, as mentioned, is a classic example of prohibition dilemmas. Finally, we go to the single agent dilemma. The agent ought all things considered to do. A ought all things considered to do B, and she cannot do both A and B. In other words, the moral agent is compelled to act on two or more equally the same moral options, but she cannot choose both. For instance, a medical doctor found out that her patient has HIV. For sure, the medical doctor may experience tension between the legal requirement to report the case and the desire to respect confidentiality. Although the Medical Code of Ethics acknowledges our obligation to follow legal requirements and to intervene to protect the vulnerable. In multi-person dilemma, on the other hand, the situation is such that one agent P1 ought to do a second agent P2 ought to do B. And though each agent can do what he ought to do, it is not possible both for P1 to do A and P2 to do B. According to Labasin, the multi-person does not, inasmuch as agents X, Y, and Z may possibly have chosen conflicting moral choices. That is, person X chooses A instead of B and C, and person Y chooses B instead of A and C, so on and so forth. The multi-person dilemma occurs in situations that involve several persons, like family, an organization, or a community, who is expected to come up with consensual decision on a moral issue at hand. A family may be torn between choosing to terminate or prolong the life of a family member. An organization may have to choose between complying with the wage law by cutting its workforce or by retaining its current workforce by paying them below the required minimum wage. The multi-person dilemma requires more than choosing what is right. It also entails that the persons involved reach a general consensus. In such a manner, the moral obligation to do what is right becomes more complicated. On the one hand, the integrity of the decision ought to be defended on moral grounds. On the other hand, the decision must also prevent the organization from breaking apart. Thank you for listening for this lecture. Now we go to your activity. You have to decide what to do in this particular situation. So in this Dark Knight, the character of Joker introduces many moral ethical dilemmas through the course of the film. I'm going to show you a video afterwards. So this particular fairy experiment, the Joker's fairy experiment is set up as follows. One, there are two fairies. The first fairy is filled with normal, law-abiding citizens, while the second fairy is filled with the population of Gotham Prison. Both ships suddenly find out their ship is full of explosives. Number three, each ship has the detonator to the other and are told that if anyone attempts to escape, or that if by 12 a.m. one ship has not been blown up, they will both be blown up. So let us watch this particular video.
Sir, they've stopped their engines.
Right, get on the radio. Tell them we'll come back and pick them up once we dump the scumbags.
Liberty, this is Spirit. Come in.
What the heck was that?
Liberty, come in, please. This is Spirit. Come in.
Down to the engine room now.
Captain, got 100 barrels down there rigged to blow. In this.
Oh my God.
Looks like some kind of detonator.
Why would they give us the detonator to our own bomb?
Tonight, you're all gonna be a part of a social experiment. Bound to blow you all sky high.
Liberty, come in, over. It's dead.
Anyone attempts to get off their boat, you all die. Each of you has a remote. Blow up the other boat. At midnight, I blow you all up. If, however, one of you presses the button, I'll let that boat live. So, who's it gonna be? Harvey Dent's most wanted scumbag collection, or the sweet and innocent civilians? You choose. Oh, and you might want to decide quickly, because the people on the other boat may not be quite so noble.
Stay back.
Well, now, who are you to decide? We ought to talk this over at least.
We don't all have to die. Those men had their chance.
We are not going to talk about this.
Why aren't we talking about it?
They're talking over the same exact thing on the other boat. Let's put it to a vote.
I want everybody to put their votes on this piece of paper. If anyone's got pens, pass it along. We need to get these votes in quickly. Come on.
Is 140 against 396 for.
So go ahead, do it.
We're still here. And that means they haven't killed us yet either.
You don't want to die, but you don't know how to take a life. Give it to me. The Indian will kill you and take it anyway.
No one wants to get their hands dirty. Fine. I'll do it. Those men on that boat, they made their choices. They chose to murder and steal. It doesn't make any sense for us to have to die too.
Give it to me. You can tell them I took it by force. Give it to me, and I'll do what you should have did 10 minutes ago.
And here we go.
Now, your second activity is for you to decide what are the two moral dilemmas that are shown in this particular video. I'm going to show it to you, and then you have to also decide what you are going to do.
All right, Fatso, out of the car. I'm gonna capture this. Come on! Give me your wallet. Don't you?
Well, there goes the money for the lipo.
See, the great thing about robbing a fat guy is it's an easy getaway, you know? They can't really chase you.
It's actually doing him a favor. It's less money for him to buy food. What you want? Come on! Come on, come on!
That's a shame. All right, I'm gonna call NBC.
Officer! He's stealing my car! Officer, I was carjacked. I was held up at gunpoint. He took my wallet, everything.
Okay, thanks anyway. They can't get another plane.
All right, what's wrong with the plane we got? They're just checking it out.
Oh,
no, not getting on there. Come on, let's get something to eat here in Sticksville.
All right. Hold it right there.
What?
You're under arrest.
Under arrest? What for?
Article 223-7 of the Latham County Penal Code.
What? No, we didn't do anything.
That's exactly right. The law requires you to help or assist anyone in danger as long as it's reasonable to do so.
I never heard of that.
It's new. It's called the Good Samaritan Law. Let's go.
Good Samaritan law? Are they crazy?
Why would we want to help somebody?
I know.
That's what nuns and Red Cross workers are for.
Well, the Samaritans are an ancient tribe. Very helpful to people.
So for that, thank you so much for listening to me. And I hope that you are going to submit your output to Fussy Karen. Thank you po.